Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 395. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. We're honored to have back with us the internationally celebrated and award-winning author and musician and songwriter, Rik Palieri.
Hey, Barney, how you doing?
Hey, good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great,
Great.
and it's great to be on your show again. It's been a long time.
I know. So, because we were just talking before, before the show, was that so this is episode 395. Last time you were on, it was episode 86.
Hmm.
So it's almost every, we got to make sure you come on sooner than every 310 episodes or so.
Yes,
So
yes. Well, the whole thing is what I was saying, Barney, is that you really, in order to do, a fun interview, a lot of times you have to have something new to talk about,
right.
something that you feel that is really important. So I was quite honored that you wanted to talk about this new album, my album, Hands of Time. There it is. There ends it.
There it is.
And we will talk about it because it has such an interesting story of how it came to be.
Right.
Most people know me as like a folk singer, because I worked with Pete Seeger and, Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Utah Phillips and all the great old folkies. But long before that, when I was a little boy, my father's mother, Grandma Kay, loved country and Western music. And every time she put, we'd visit and she put on her hi-fi stereo, Hank Williams and Hank Snow and, all the Hanks and Johnny Cash and like songs like Wolverton Mountain. And I grew up with those kinds of songs too. But when I was doing folk music, I kind of forgot about it,
Mm,
because I was totally into traditional folk and Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, and Leadbelly. That was my trilogy. I mean, I
right.
loved Pete and Woody and Leadbelly. Those were the people that inspired me. And then, as I was traveling around the country, I started going down to Nashville. And the first time I went to the Grand Old Opry, I was doing these school shows, and I had a little, just enough time to steal away, drive all the way down to Nashville. And when I saw Grandpa Jones up on stage, and Hank Snow, and Roy Acuff, and Minnie Pearl, I started realizing there was a much bigger connection between country music and folk music. And of course, there always has been, because it wasn't until I'd say sometime in the 50s, that they started calling country music country music. It was known as hillbilly music, it was known as folk music. It wasn't until, in the 50s when they kind of started, separating all the genres into what things were. And they wanted to get that country western music away from those radical folk singers. So they wanted to distance themselves from folk music, and so that's the whole idea with the country and western. And so I went down there and I ran into this really interesting group. I was down just sitting there watching the Grand Ole Opry, and there was this big guy, and he was complaining. Big gruff guy. Oh, it's not like it used to be. Oh, I remember the old days. And I said, "Who is this loudmouth?" And I went over and I said, "Well, I got to figure it out." And I came over and I talked to him, and he was the former president of the Grand Ole Opry fan club,
Oh,
so
wow.
he knew everybody, and he was interested, that I was playing the banjo and stuff. And so he gave me his card and he said he had a thing called Country 101. And the next time I was in Nashville to come down there. And so I didn't really think about it. He called me up and he said, "Okay, now we're going to do the Country 101, Rik, and we're going to be doing featuring string bean. Now you can play some old string beans music, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I can play a few songs." And great, you come down there. So I came down. Barney, the thing was, I get there and the room is filled with string bean's friends.
Oh, wow.
I mean, people who went hunting with string bean, went fishing with string bean, was the photographer who did the photographs for his albums. I mean, and I said, "Wow, this is different." And then Glenn Thompson, who was the gentleman from the Grand Ole Opry fan club, became my friend. And he kind of took me under his wing and wanted me to understand about what was country music. And I would stay at his house anytime I was passing through, and he would quiz me. Barney, he would quiz me, like, who is this? Why is this guy important? And who is that? What song did they play? And, so we'd spend hours and hours, talking about the old country music and watching videos and so forth. And as I started going back and forth to Nashville, my mind started writing
Huh.
different songs that I had written in the past. And I was down there and I started thinking about, well, it would be really kind of cool to do something different. I've
Hmm.
recorded 16 albums. You know what I mean? So all kinds of traditional folk music, some of my songs, all kinds of things. But I said, what if I wasn't Rik Palieri, the folk singer, but Rik Palieri, the singer?
Huh.
What would that be like?
Right.
And so I was thinking about that around this time when we were raising money for Utah Phillips had this flanger car, this caboose railroad car that was out where the old Philo records in Ferrisburg, Vermont. And I was involved in that because I was a good friend of Utah's. And the idea we're going to move this car all the way out to Weed, California. We have to put it on these two trucks, but we had to raise all this money. So I'm doing a bunch of interviews at this area, which was the former Philo Records studio, the
Oh,
barn,
wow.
the famous
Yeah.
barn. And I was in there, and the head of Philo, Bill Schubart, and his half brother Michael Kultur were talking in the house, and they stop and they look like, "Do you hear it?" And the other one turns around and goes, "Yeah, yeah, it's still here." And I'm going, "What?" They go, "It's the studio, man. The studio. The sound is still in the walls." Well, that was the beginning of this album. When I thought about that, hey, wouldn't it be cool to record right here where the old Philo studios were, right in this room? So Stephen Pilcher, who's the new owner of the house, I talked to him, and we were able to do the whole project with the caboose and move it out to Weed, California. And I talked to him and I said, is there any possibility like we could record here? And he thought about it and he said, yeah. He goes, we can do that. And so Phil Henry, great musician and songwriter and producer, I talked to Phil and I had said, Phil, I've got this crazy idea. I said, we're going to record an album where the old Philo barn was. Can you bring your Porta studio in there? He said, yeah. So it was
Huh.
like it was right before the snow started falling. you know. We had to pick a day because once the snow started falling, then the wood stove would be on, and we wouldn't be able to do it. So we had to plan it out, and we went into that room. It's a beautiful room, and it was exactly where the recording used to be. And we set up the microphones the same way that they had years ago. So we had big microphones set up from the ceiling and all around me. And I started recording, boom, I felt the magic. And I said, yes, this is it. This is the beginning of this project. So that's how it started. And the idea, some of the songs had been laying around for a while, never recorded in a professional way, tabletop recording things, but never in a real studio. And I said, well, let's see what we can do. And so we went in there, and all of my tracks from this album are all recorded in that room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we spent the whole day recording, and so I did all my tracks there. And the title track, it's the called "The Hands of Time," right? And the idea, and you can see this is cool because you can see there's the flanger car. You see the flanger car over
Yeah.
there, over right here.
Right there.
Well,
Yeah.
I got to figure out where my hand is. There, there it is. And that was taken by Lynn Clower, and you could see the Milky Way is right over there, right
Right.
under over there, wherever there is. Here,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
here. And so that was the idea. Was that was the inspiration. This recording at Philo. And so this Hands of Time was a song that I had for a while, but it never worked. You know, it was like it was there and it was good, but there was something that was missing on that song.
Right.
And it was a song that I wrote that remember, like, think about American Graffiti. Okay.
Okay.
You remember that film? And
Yeah.
you think about the two lovers, and they're separated. They had one last chance to try to get together, and there's only one person who has the power to do that, and that's the DJ, the radio DJ. And they have to go, he goes all the way and he finds Wolfman Jack, and he does that. So this song is a love dedication song. When I would be
Huh.
driving out west, I would hear late at night, this is, Joe, and, can you send this song out to Mary, and the DJ would, and so I wrote the song about that. And I got the DJ that I used for that was my friend Ron Olesko, who's a DJ down in New Jersey, and he pretended that he was that DJ that was going to, put this together. And so Phil was able to put together this kind of feeling of, you hear the car. The car is driving along. You hear the radio and searching for the radio station. Remember how we used to do that? Searching for the radio station. And then all of a sudden you hear the DJ and he gives a call, his call number, and then he sends out the love dedication. And so that song, this Hands of Time, I did it in that very old country western kind of thing. Very slow, very the words very clear and deliberate, and I had pedal steel guitar in the background, and it was exactly what I wanted, and that's the whole album has those kinds of moments. So it's, I guess, you could say it's that kind of concept album that we used to think about in the past, where
Right.
somehow the songs kind of fit together. And the first song on here is called "Living in a Truck Stop." And
Mm.
that song I wrote while I was living in a truck stop. I was out west all the time. Well, this particular time, I was down in Louisiana and staying at the truck stop, and I'm pulling out, and I got this crazy idea for a song, and I started beating on the steering wheel with the rhythm, and I started, just writing the song, but I didn't really think that it would be a song. You know what I mean? It was just fun. I was just having fun, living in a truck stop, hard going flip flop, thinking about my baby back home. One of those old trucker songs. And so when I talked to Phil about it, I had never recorded the song. I didn't even know how to play it. Do you know
Oh.
what I mean? I
Huh.
never
Yeah.
recorded the song before. And we kind of talked about it and talked about it. And we came up with this whole kind of cool version of it that has almost it's like a trucker song, but it has a little bit of a Beach Boy kind of a thing in the middle of it. Well, this kind of real kind of groove in it. And it turned out really well. And that's the first track. So here's a song that I never recorded, never actually played before. And it's the very first song that you hear on the album. So
Oh
it
wow.
was pretty cool. And then we have other songs in here. A song that I had written a while back, never recorded properly. And this song, Barney, this has a story. You can't make up this. This is riding the westbound. This is about hobos. Okay. And I'm not
Mm.
talking about homeless people. I'm talking about the authentic hobos,
Because you
that
mentioned, yeah, because you mentioned before, it's like, and the last time you were on that, hobo is actually short for homeward bound, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I wrote this song about this, and I might have talked about this song before. about this king of the hobos named
Yeah.
Frog, you
Yeah.
know, and I had this the interesting thing, the update on this thing. So the folks for you don't know this story, it's so bizarre. This guy Frog is king of the hobos. And there's a kings and queens, and there's a big coronation that happens in Britt, Iowa, once a year. And so Frog was a king of the hobos. And I got an email from his pals one time that he had died, or what we call in the hobo lingo, caught the westbound. And that means you get the
Mm.
little last train up to heaven. And
Yeah.
so I wrote the song in honor of Frog. And then a couple of weeks went by, and I get this email back, and they say, "Oh, they had a big party for Frog in St. Paul, Minnesota. All the old hobos are there. They're singing songs, they're reciting poetry." And they get a phone call from guess who? Frog. And he's wondering why everybody's there, and he wasn't invited. And they went, "Frog, we thought you were dead." I said, "Dad, no, 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 I was robbed." He said, "Well, what do you mean you were robbed?" So I'm walking down the road and somebody lifted my wallet out of my back pocket, stole my ID. They started pretending they were me. They went all over the place, and they
Oh,
went on
wow.
a bus and they died. And the
Mm.
police pulled out the ID. They thought it was me too. They started calling everybody up and telling them that I'm dead. And he said, "I'm here to tell you that I ain't dead. But now the good thing is I know exactly what my funeral's going to be like." So I wrote this song about Frog. And then what happened is a few years later, right before the pandemic, I got notified that Frog actually did die.
Mm.
And that his last request was that I came and sang that song at his gravesite.
Right.
And so I went out to Britt, Iowa, with my friend Rick Nestler. We went out there together, and I'm standing there. Barney, on his tombstone is my song.
Oh, wow.
It's right there. The first verse of my song with my name on it is on his tombstone. And so I recorded that song, and I added in this recitation that I wrote about the old hobos. I don't know, did I ever do that for you?
Yeah,
About
you did.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I recorded that and put those two together, and it really makes a nice presentation.
Mm.
And so that's on there. And then I did this thing that I never recorded before. Absolutely not. The hobo nickel guy.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and during the Depression, the hobos used to take a nickel, with the Indian head nickel with a buffalo on it, and they
Yeah.
used to carve them and recarve the faces, and they would put an old Depression era hobo's face on there. They would change the face, and they would change the buffalo into a train, and they would use these hobo nickels for whatever they needed. They would trade them for lodging or eating something or whatever. And so I was given some hobo nickels by this guy. He called himself the hobo nickel guy. And so I wrote this whole song about the tradition of the hobo nickels. So that's on there too. And then the song is Just Too Old to Still Die Young. Now that song was another song that I didn't really think that was going to be a real song. I mean, it was a joke, you know? I was at that time, turning 50 years old. I had my road manager was in England, Tony, and I I called him up and I was telling him that he was getting old, and we were laughing about it because I'm turning 50 and he's turning 60, and he goes, "Old man, I'm not old. I'm still riding my Harley Davidson motorcycle. In fact, I just got a new patch. I sewed it on my jacket. It said, 'Too old to die young.'" And I said, "Ooh, that's an interesting line." So he challenged me to write a song, So
Right.
I wrote this song, and it was just for fun. And then, just for fun, I was a big fan of Car Talk with Click and Clack,
Right.
you
Yep.
know.
Yep. The
So I
Temper
sent it,
Brothers.
I sent it in, to Car Talk, and I was down in Nashville. It just happened to be I was in Nashville. My wife calls me out, Rick, I'm listening to NPR. you're on Car Talk. They're playing your song. so the song first debuted, and that was just a rough recording that I had done. So I always wanted to do more of a professional recording with that song. And so that's what we
Okay.
did here. We got Rebecca Padula in there. And the way that we recorded it is sort of like I wanted to be like if you were at a party, right? Like you go in and maybe there's only one person there and that person is singing along with you. And then later on the door opens and a few more people come in and then they're singing along. And then a few more people come in. And by the end, you just have a whole room of people singing. So that was the idea. And that was so cool because I could talk to Phil Henry about these ideas. This is the first time that I ever did an album that was like this, where I would kind of bounce an idea off of Phil, and we would together think about it and figure out like, okay, how are we going to make that happen? You know? And so it was very interesting, because I've worked with producers before, and usually a producer is like, they have their stamp. They want your album to sound sort of like in their stable, if you know what I mean. And this was not like that. This was about creativity, about being open to all kinds of different interpretations. So that this next song about Camp Broken Heart, all these songs have real people in it. You know what I mean? Every song that's on this album is based on people that I've known, And Camp Broken Heart, I was visiting with a down and out rodeo bull rider out in Oklahoma. And he was living in this trailer camp. And there were no women. There's all these other guys who were all down and out living in this trailer camp. And it was really downright and depressing. It was really, really bad. And after I left that, I wrote down the words to the song. And but I never sang it. Once again, it was a song that just sat there. And then I got a telephone call from him that he found this woman. He settled down. He moved out of state. He was living in another state, and he was happy. And then I could write the song. Then I could write the song about, okay, you were down and out, but life changes and life goes on. And so when I was talking to Phil about that, it was really interesting because I had this really strong feeling about the way I wanted it to sound. And it took a couple of times. We kept trying different things. And no, that's not it. That's not it. And finally we went through a couple of different ideas, and because I really wanted, especially that end, to be, kind of a celebration from coming out of the darkness,
Right.
And he got the idea. Remember the song with Simon and Garfunkel, the boxer, where you have that big tambourine thing?
Right. Yeah.
So he added that to it, and it lifted. We lifted the melody and put that tambourine kind of sound, and it just like yes. It really really worked out that way.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. Thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. We have some folks that are, we got listeners that are international. And I know one question, and now you're the perfect person to ask this, is to answer this question is, what is the difference between a folk song and a country song?
Well, a real folk song, I mean, an honest folk song, has no known author. And it was handed down from family to family. No one knows who actually wrote it. And so, and you have to go way back to find those songs, the old English ballads that came over, and were collected it was kind of funny because a lot of the old folk songs were actually collected in the United States. Because what happened is the ballads and so forth that were in England and Scotland, they kind of changed. But the people who came over at a certain point, it was frozen in time. So when the folklorists came to the United States, they found that truer version because it
Mm.
hadn't changed. Um, so a country song, could be rooted in old folk traditions, for sure. Um, Usually, one of the things that they always say, a country song is three chords and the truth. And so you're telling a story. You're telling a story in a simple way about sort of more like a rural, it doesn't have to be, but a rural kind of environment. And and in this, it's changed now. Honest, Barney, it's not what it used to be. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this album. Is I wanted to get back to those, what I call country roots. I wanted to get back to the simplicity of it, where it doesn't sound like just like a pop song. You know what I mean? Because in today's contemporary country music, it sounds more like a pop song than it does like an old Hank Williams song. Or most of those songs really were that idea of the three chords and the truth. You can say it in a simple way. You can tell a story, and it's like anything else. What are the things that motivate us?
Mm.
Love, you know, family, uh, the different situations that we grow up in. This idea of we all have our song when we're dating and things like that. So those kinds of things are part of that. And the old songs were often accompanied by just a guitar. You know, uh, Once again, that simple feeling. You look at Johnny Cash, and there's a good example of somebody saying something straight, you know, simple but
Right.
direct that relates to the people. So it's more like you're trying to relate to that kind of country rural lifestyle than, and even today's contemporary country music is still talking about pickup trucks and and that kind of backwoods kind of life. And that's why Vermont, of course, fits right in because we live in that same kind of rural kind of existence. So
Right.
it's not surprising that a lot of people here in Vermont like country music too.
Mm. And so for instance, so it's not really about the differences isn't really about the tone of it because they're all a lot of them with a guitar and stuff, but it's basically what where the source of the material comes from
Hmm.
determines where.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's a real folk
Yeah,
song,
right.
it has no author
Okay.
that is known. It goes back into antiquity where
Right.
people don't know. They've been saying Grandpa sang that song, and I learned it from Grandpa, and my father sang that song, and it's an oral tradition. You know,
Okay.
but like in the '60s when folk music became popular, what happened was a lot of people saw, they said, there's gold in them there hills, and we're going to put our copyright on that old folk song, and we're going to own it. And that's what happened, Barney.
Right.
That's what happened is old songs that people, sang for, centuries.
Right.
People would put an arrangement to it. They'd put their copyright on it. And
Right.
so it's a very kind of a frustrating thing. Um, for me, it was an eye-opening thing because when you're young, everything's I'm going to sing this song, I'm going to sing that song. When you start recording, everything changes, and
Right.
so people own this copyright and people own that copyright, and everything becomes this whole legality of you have to pay to do this and you have to pay to do that, and it takes a little bit of the fun out of it. And that's why a lot of people record their own music, you
Hmm.
know? because doing cover songs cost money.
Yeah.
And these days, when you're not getting any money for what you're recording because of the streams, I mean, this is the insanity of this, Barney, is look, I put this out when people aren't buying CDs, right?
Yeah.
People aren't buying it. And I'm making a vinyl album that people aren't buying vinyl albums. So, people would say, Rik, why did you do this? And
Mm.
I did it because number one, I have to as a creator. And I wanted something that had permanence. I didn't just, I mean, of course, it's on streams and stuff like that, but I wanted something tactile that you could hold, that you could hold in your hands. And,
Mm.
and, you know, you think about this, Barney, your first album, what was it? Do you remember? The
Oh,
first one you bought?
the first one I bought, it was a CD. It was a They Might Be Giants
Uh-huh.
CD. Yeah.
And it's special, you know?
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
bought it
for
at
me,
Harry's. I bought it at Harry's. Remember Harry's and Barry? I don't.
yes,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so, I can remember being a young kid and buying, my first Beatles album or the 45, you know,
Yeah.
and what that meant. What does music mean? You know, and that's why I wanted to do this. And what I did, just like in the old kind of productions, I put together a poster with all
Oh,
the words to my songs so that if you wanted to, you could sing along.
yeah.
And the very first, so there's all the words to the songs.
That's cool.
And then I have, a kind of fold out kind of thing. And because I did this as a Kickstarter, I have the names for people who help support the project.
Well, that's
And
awesome.
and people would ask like, well, what's the idea? Why do a Kickstarter, Rik? You know, I wanted to do the Kickstarter because I didn't want it to be just like I wanted to make an album.
Right.
I wanted to be that there were enough people out there who believed in me that wanted me to make an album.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That it wasn't like a vanity thing, like, oh, I'm just going to make this album. But all of these supporters from all over the United States and other parts of the world, they all supported this album. And
Right.
what was different about this album than any of the other ones, because I've done some of these Kickstarters before, was the fact that instead of just, pre-buying the CD for like $20, okay? And some people did do that. A lot of people, they gave $100
Mm.
because they believed in me. They
Right.
wanted, it was not necessarily about this. It was about investing in me as an artist, as a creator. And that's what Kickstarter is really about. It's for creators. There's this GoFundMe thing and other things. They're usually for hardships. This doing a Kickstarter for a musician, it's not about being a hardship case. It's not like, well, we couldn't come up with this money or whatever. It's about dreaming. It's about having a dream and let's see if we can make this happen with
Right.
no restrictions. Do you know what I mean? In other
Right.
words, I could make the album like I wanted with the fold out poster, with the artwork without thinking about, how can I do this? It was like, okay, I've got the support from the community that want me to create. I'm going to create it. Now I have 30 days to do it. You know how a Kickstarter works, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have 30 days from the day that you launch it to make that dream happen. And if you don't do it, nobody gets charged, but you don't get a penny, not
Right.
one penny. So you can imagine the intensity that's on you to try to make this happen. And luckily, luckily for me, it didn't take that long, so I could rest a little bit. The money was there, the album was there, and I did the stretch goal to make the vinyl. And I never had a vinyl. I've been on vinyl early on, but I never had my own vinyl recording. And it was, once again, it's like okay, well, you got this vinyl recording, Rick, but who's going to buy it? You know?
Right.
But it's funny because there are people who want that not only want to buy all of this stuff, but they, in addition to it, they want to buy the vinyl album too. So it really is a telltale sign that people are interested in what you're doing. And like this wonderful photograph here that Lynn did, she wanted it to be on here. You know what I mean? It was one of those things we had talked about, and she said, "Oh yeah, Rick, go ahead and use it." There was a lot of people who were supporting me. The photograph that's on here on the cover, this came from a guy named Ricardo. Let's get his last name here. It's Riccardo Marquise, and he's from Italy. I was on tour in Italy, and he took this shot, and there's something about it that really kind of, I said, yeah, this makes a really, as you can see, it's a kind of cool cover, with my hand in there, and the hands of time, because
Right.
I was like thinking about it. Some people say, well, you should put a clock on there. It's like a clock. No, hands, the hands of time. My hands, my worn out hands. I felt that was the thing. There's a lot of different songs on there. There's 11 different songs on there. So I just want to make sure that I talk about this one song because you asked about a folk song. So I have one
Right.
song on here that is a folk song, and that's Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. Now, you know that song. It was sung by Grateful Dead and Woody Guthrie and all kinds of people. I was in the Museum of Popular Culture south of Nashville, and this guy, Martin Fisher, one of the few people who has one of these, the real 1800 Edison cylinder recording with a
Oh, cool.
gigantic horn. So I went in there and I recorded this song on that 1800 vintage Edison cylinder recording. So that's what you hear on here is that recording. He sent me the digital, recording of the cylinder recording. Uh, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And with Dom Flemons, who's from the Carolina Chocolate Drops and just a great guy, well-known historian, when he wrote the liner notes for this, and it was kind of cool what he wrote. He said, on the album Hands of Time, the road weaves and bends to the tune of Rick's powerful songs of heartbreak, hoboing, moving on grief-breaking snippets into the places where folk traditions overlap with traditional country music. This is the place where the westbound railroad boxcar and the circus tents give way to the interstates, the highway trucks and truck stops. Given his years of preserving folk tradition, this album proves to be a unique departure for Rick, who has chosen all but one song to be an original composition, which will place him in the pantheon of the folk troubadours of old. Hands of
Yeah.
Time, and then it goes on this last part, the one traditional song, Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, captured on an Edison cylinder recorder from the late 19th century, will also literally take you back in time when music was first being recorded and people for the first time were able to hear themselves played back on a speaker.
Mm,
And
that's
there's a
cool.
lot more. Dom wrote great liner notes.
So if people want to purchase this album, where can they do that then, Rick?
Well, they can do that. Well, best of all is just go directly to me. And they can
Okay.
email me at rick@banjo.net. It will be online as well, to get the digital version. Um, but if you want to get the real CDs and stuff, just write to me because I'll sign it
Okay.
and
Yeah.
send it because it's a limited edition. I didn't
Right.
do a whole lot of them.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
there's only I have about I sent it's out to all the radio stations, all the folk radio stations right now. And then I have left about 150. So it's a very limited edition. I'll have
Mhm.
100 albums come I think, at the beginning of November, just in time for the holidays. So
Yeah.
if there's something that you want, just write Rik, R-I-K, at banjo.net. And that
There
goes
you go.
directly to me.
Yep, and they can, and all that information too is they can go to Rik. Yeah, they can go. So you said Rik at banjo.net.
Right. Or they
And
can
then
go to
your website.
rikpalieri.com for my
Yep,
website. But it's better to
yep,
just send me an email, because then I'll see it directly, and then I can send it out. And I have other things. I have my book, Banjo Man, and other things. So if people want to contact me for anything like that, other albums as well, that's a good way to do it, because I like talking with people. You know,
right.
I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not in that situation where like I want to put a barrier between me and the people who enjoy the music.
right. So perfect. So yeah, Rik, this has been great. You need to come back on. You got to come back on again soon when you have either another album, another book, or something coming
Sure.
out.
Or yeah,
This
we could
is
just
fun.
talk. And
We just talk. We
anytime,
just
Barney,
banter.
you
Yeah,
could say, Rik, I don't know. I'm feeling like I just want to talk with you. Just
yeah.
let me know. I've
Come back
always got
on.
something to talk about,
That's
and
true.
but this really meant a lot to me to be able to talk to this about this album, because you can see it is a really special thing for me.
Right.
And working with the great musicians. I have wonderful musicians on here. Rebecca Padula, Mitch Barron from right here in my community, of course, Phil Henry. And then we have folks from Nashville. We have
Right.
Rob McNorland and the late Caton Roberts. He's not with us anymore. He used to play pedal steel for Hank Snow's band. And
Yep.
we have Jen Larson. Jen used to sing with Garrison Keeler on Prairie Home Companion. So she's on
Right.
here as well. And Bruce Michael Miller down in Nashville. And then we have Kevin Mall and Jeff Kimball. And we have Jeffrey Pepper Rogers and Wendy Sassafras Ramsey, all kinds and Brian Hobbs. So all of these people have contributed to make this Hands of Time come to life.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rik. This has been great talking to you again. It was amazing chatting again.